Cashier with a master's degree. I mean, I was freaking homeless, girl. So, listen up. It's April 15th, 2023. It's Finance Nation here. So, I was a cashier, and I'm a cashier now. And in the past, I'm going far back. I was thinking about how far back I wanted to go in this story. So I had got my home foreclosed on. I became homeless, and so why am I a cashier with a master's degree? So I was on Social Security disability. I still am, and I only made. They didn't take out the Medicare premium back then because Obamacare hadn't put in that law in effect to just say, oh, we're automatically going to take it out or something, and we're going to penalize you if you're not on it or something. So I had $915 a month, and I wasn't taking my meds properly. Things weren't all together. I knew that if I worked that there was income limits, but I didn't know what those income limits were exactly. And no one at the Social Security office would help. No one at the doctor's office would help to either research it or either look it up. I mean, Ticket to Work wasn't helping. The information wasn't there. And Social Security, no one knew there. Every single time I asked them to talk to them and say, what are my income limits and what is that? How do I know what that is? How do you know what my income limit is? What is it called? No one would explain it to me. And so I was off and on homeless. What I mean by off and on, I would take a hotel room every so now and then. But, and I even dug into my retirement to basically fund some of the hotel nights. And so I got off of the streets. I ran into my mom, and so I didn't go to work right away. I paid my mother like a really small stipend. I don't want to say what it is because that's her business as well, but it was really small out of my Social Security check. Of course, it's significant to that amount, like any percentage on, like, by then, I think my Social Security check might have been sort of like $942, but they were taking out the Medicare premium or whatever. But anyway, after about a year, I was looking to possibly go back to work, but I didn't know what the rules were, how to do that, and my head was a lot more on straight. I was taking my meds properly, but just to also maintain my Social Security check. I hadn't finished my master's degree at that point. I only had my bachelor's degree, and I was 2 courses from my master's degree. And, that made me really depressed. That was really huge part of my step. I had a lot of anxiety, more than I even knew until I graduated, how big a threshold that was. Like, even when I was homeless, it just really dragged me down because education is so important to me. And I don't regret, like, cash flowing out or spending, all the money that I spent on it. But, so I was a cashier, and I think maybe 3 or 4 months in, 2 months in, maybe, God just spoke to me. Oh yeah, you wanted to do this, remember? And now you're not homeless. And I even took a course in college, another university, not my university, and I got a C as a master's course as a homeless person. Which some people might call impressive. I was very disappointed in the instructor because they weren't consistent in the grading, and I wanted to contest it, and the staff, when I was wanting to contest it, they weren't really supportive, but I really wasn't in the position. Like, I gave up. I was like, well, I'm just not going to go to that university. I was only trying to and I did that intentionally just in case that did happen, and I wouldn't have to transfer that. I don't have to transfer the course. Obviously, it won't even transfer. Many universities, they won't transfer, like, grades below a certain level depending on your degree program. So anything below a B or better, so a C, a D, is not going to take it at my master's degree level university. So I had taken this extra course, spent cash money, in order to pay for that. So I went back to my university. I wasn't homeless then, but it was really hard. I'm really glad I kept my brain activated during that time, even just to take the class. And so I finished the first course. Oh gosh, it was a 91.4, and a 91.4 is not an A at my master's degree university for master's degree students. It is a B. You have to earn a 92. And my last course I did get an A in, but so that was a little bit, frustrating, because I was like, one question on the exam, that's all it was, or one little point here or there on a paper, and that's all it would have been to get an A. And that's the thing, it gets the same grade average as someone who got an 82. And I had, so it's one thing, but I don't know why I'm getting into that. Grades are really important to me. But anyway, I literally went to graduation at my university. We can bring our family at graduation. It's called Amberton University. They have online degree programs and in classroom programs as well. But people come from all over the country at graduation, and they brought their families with them to walk across with them across the stage. If I knew that I could bring more than one person, then that would have been really huge with me. So I did ask my mother. She was really pivotal. I would have also asked my sister if I knew I could have more than one family member. But the budget, and I had lived so much on that little bit for so long that I didn't realize how small that I got with spending, like not spending money, and how strong that got until I put in a budget worksheet and stuff, and I was like, whoa, I spend how much? Only like $750 a month or something really ridiculous to 1 year. It's not $750 a month now. It is everything after all the inflation, because last year, the year before last year, everything was about $1,000 a month. And then after the inflation right now, it's like it's projected to be $11.89 a month on average. What I'm noticing is, because I do drive older vehicles, is that the vehicle maintenance, coolant flush, brake flush, oil change, car tires, every single month is like the freaking maintenance on the vehicle is like a freaking car payment. And the cars that I've had, I've been lucky. My grandparents gave me my first car since I had been homeless. I had, of course, had vehicles before, but I had owned it outright. And so that was a Nissan Altima. It was 2008 for when I got it was in 2016. So it was 8 years old. I now have a Nissan Versa. It's a 2011, and it's now 2023. So that's another thing. And it's like, well, because you want to keep up an older vehicle so it does last. Especially if it's a newly used vehicle to you. But that was another thing. I was like, I started tracking, because of Bigger Pockets Money. I started tracking my expenses. She literally, anyway, forgot her name, but you can Bigger Pockets Money. Off the top of my head, there's Scott, who is the founder, and maybe I'll think of it by the end of the video. But this lady mentioned like not every single podcast, but I was just hearing her say expense spreadsheet, expense report. And so I finally go, okay, I'm going to do this. So I started that in like 2021, and I was like, I'm going to be, and so what it's caused me to do, it's caused me to actually, at least in 2022, towards the end, when I also had started tracking my investing, how much I invest each month, how much I saved each month. And that was huge, to the point where I was like, you know what, I can spend a little more. And so had I not had that, and then the stress got alleviated by, of course, I did always keep, I've had a financial report of just my assets. since like 2017, but never actually keeping track of the budget expenses. And it also keeps, like, even now after inflation, like, I started going, well, I'm going to write down the prices at all of these places. So as a cashier with a master's degree, I have decided, like, at one point that I wanted to make the job easy on me, like, through the education I've attained. So choosing to use my degree. And that is because I had actually become like a store manager at a convenience store, racetrack. You might have heard of it. But they're a major chain of fuel stations, and I had been a manager at that location after my bachelor's degree. It was so much stress, and it was still, even though as hard as it was and as excruciating as it was still easier than than earning an education. So, and I knew that then. I even thought that then. So I was like, well, you've had that hard job. You can make this job really easy, because you thought the associates had it easy, and now you're an associate. So you think work smarter, not harder, is the mindset that I took, and just said, use your mind whenever there's a challenge that might come up, or just like, I'm going to call the self-checkout screen, I'm going to call that a computer screen, because I did work corporate as a financial analyst, coordinator, and some other things in that background. And so it's really fun for me to do my spreadsheets, to just try to keep up some of those skills. For one of the first years, I put up a pivot table, and I was like, that took me maybe 2 hours to figure that out. And then it was the next year, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And the pivot table was okay. It was the chart that I had connected to the pivot table, and I had did it with a VLOOKUP and all this stuff, and I was like, that took me like 2 hours to remember that, because I had worked back between like 2006 in corporate, after the fuel station store manager position. I had quit that job, but so like the end of 2006 all the way up to like 2010, 2011. And so now it was like 2014 or 15, and I'm now doing these spreadsheets like 4 or 5 years later, trying to refresh my memory and just doing a lot of guessing and checking. And then when I finally figured it out, I was like, yeah, I figured it out. Now I know how to do it for next year. I was like, I'm not spending that amount of time on that. So I don't have the chart anymore, but it was really cool to see like my net worth go up over the course of 12 months through the chart. It was a line graph. But what it takes when you don't have the money, it's easy, because you're just like, oh, that's my budget. And people don't think that people with less are good at budgeting. Like, if you're exactly paycheck to paycheck and you have like $5 every time, and you are right on time with budgeting and spreading out your money over the course of a month. But it's sort of like you have this little clock on you, this little, someone rephrased it as a thermometer, a money thermometer. Once your balance is high and it's towards the end of the month, you're like, oh, I gotta find a way to spend it. And so putting that in check is a different thing altogether, right? And so I thought about that earlier, like 3 or 4 days ago. I was at work, and I was like, so right now your expenses are at this point because of the inflation. I was like, maybe you haven't had your big expense of the month yet. I just had it. It was on my car. I needed a brake flush. So I just realized when I was looking at my spreadsheet from last year and this year that there is something with the car or medical expenses every single month. And so I've got to figure out a way to budget that in. And just like very rarely is there a month without something that just came up that's like, oh, this is the emergency for the month. And so it's a little frustrating on that end, but to have that constantly go on. And so 1 month last year, I got my pay raise. Was it last year? And of course, stuff was going up. And I said, no, I am not going to, because I was like, I want to be part of the fire movement, even though, my income's low and I'm on income limits to maintain my Social Security. There's shrinkage. People say you can't shrink your way to wealth, and I'm like, well, if my expenses are $1,000 a month or whatever, that only calls for $250,000 to $300,000 net worth, right? If you're going to maintain that lifestyle. And so couponing or any of that is going to help. What's another problem is that I noticed that I have an employee discount at Kroger grocery store, so I have to basically factor in the discount on a monthly basis on, like, if I lose that discount. And now Kroger also added an expense, if I'm not an employee, would be if I get cash back, getting charged a cash back fee. And that was really, I don't get charged that as an employee, but I would get charged that as a non-employee, or unless I retire from the company, and then you get to keep your employee benefits. And it's just like, well, do I want to work those extra years if I've made it to that point? So like I said, I'm not telling y'all my net worth. It is significant, possibly for someone who is on Social Security, disability at least. And so it's not like some of these high YouTubers. It's not anywhere near $500,000, but it is a strong amount of money. So there is a point where it's just like, well, when I get to that point, and then I have to factor in that extra added expense. When it comes to debit cards, like maybe debit cash back, I would only get like $5, right? So I would only get $5 from the debit cash back at Kroger because you have that option. Well, the other option is to use the free ATM and get out $20. The free available ATM. And I would always I was like, why always go to the free available ATM? And I thought about it and I said, well, I only do the $5, so I don't know if there will be any, because I have additional checking accounts, if those are going to be accounts that I end up closing because I don't want to pay 50 cents. That is like a small percentage on someone's expenses necessarily, if they have a higher amount of expenses that they pay each month. Just like if on a cashback credit card, if your net income is $20,000, $200 a year in cash back, which is 1 year, 2 years ago, I tracked all my cash back from all my cashback apps, from my cashback credit cards, and it was just like $220. Well, that's 1%, and if employers do 1 to 3% pay raises, then that's almost like a 1% pay raise. Not really, it's a rebate, right? It's not a pay raise, but it's 1% over the course of a year. And but of course, if that same person had the same expenses, and they probably don't, but on $100,000, that $200 is a lot less. So, if they had $100,000. So the whole thing with me was with being, with the cash back on the machine for a 50-cent fee. I was like, I thought about it. I'll just go to the ATM. And I was like, but partly how I keep my expenses down is that if I get cash back, I would not take out $20. So that would be an extra added expense if I chose to keep those available checking accounts. The other option, if the checking account offers free checks sent to the house, and many of them do, I used to at one point just do mobile check deposits and write them to myself, and that is something that is an option. But so there is ways around it. It is such a hassle. But once I started doing the expense spreadsheet, the mobile check deposits were like vanished, because everything was like, all I have to do is this over here. It's all organized. I already know what's coming up. Logging into my daily balances. It's very simple and very straightforward. It can be stressful. So my Social Security check is still low. Before the Medicare premium right now, it's 12 something, and after the Medicare premium, it's like what gets deposited in my account is like just under $1,100. So, a month. And so that is very little. And if my expenses, so that's a little frustrating, because it's like, oh, my expenses are $11.89 a month. And so I'm still short, almost $100 basically on the covering my full expenses with that. Now, with that said, I'm not, but I am short on that, because if I did switch over and quit my job, I'm on subsidized housing, and they would take 30% of that Social Security income. But then I did the math, and I was like, well, that's only, my rent is at top rent, so I'm like, it's not even $100 cut in pay. It's not even $100, cut in expenses. But so it would barely meet that if I were to basically leave there. And it's a little bit different. So being homeless and with a bachelor's degree, it was weird. And then you don't think it's ever going to happen to you. And I would never wish some of the crap that people pulled against me, discriminating against me, hating on me just because I was homeless. They were really evil and really cruel. And if that's you, then you're not welcome here anyway. So I went to, I finished my master's degree. I was so proud of I spent like $200 on my frame, for my master's degree. And so that is just so exciting and so thrilling, and it's so amazing, such an opportunity for me. And then I was like, I was a little bit down about it at one point, like, why am I not using this for another career? And that's, that is partially, you can say that is partially a choice. The other thing is I just have to take the cost benefit analysis. I've had anemic episodes where it's like, if I am going to work that day, like say I'm lucky I'm not going to work that day anyway, great, I can take a nap all day, or like if I'm hallucinating or something, then thank goodness that even if I'm at work, then it's only going to be for only 4 hours in that day, or something really small. And I'm really grateful because I have that scope to operate in. Other than that, sometimes I get real jealous when I watch videos and it's like, oh, you can do this to increase your income, you can do this side hustle, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, and it's like, and then like to see Instacart or opportunities like that, like I've thought about that as well. And I was like, right before I got the vehicle that I have, the Nissan Versa, I was like, oh, if I get real lucky and get a really good car with really low miles on like $5,000. Yeah, right. But like, just say I did, and then the best car I found was like $6,500 on low miles. It had 63,000 miles, $6,500, 63,000 miles, and it had one accident, one owner. And so I don't know what the accident was, though. Not sure the Carfax reports, oh, it was totaled, or it was just a fender bender. Because if it's a fender bender, then it's like, I don't. It could be like the equivalent of no accident. It was just like a little bump, and it depends on if they actually fixed the car. If they fixed the car, then it could be as good as new. And if they didn't fix the car, then you got a vehicle that has an accident on it. But I was like, so if it's that vehicle, and which was over budget, because I didn't pay for this, the title's in my name, I didn't pay for the vehicle. And it was a gift. But if I were lucky enough, I was like, oh, I could possibly, choose my own hours and do Instacart. There are things that that I think possibly factor in. You can check. Don't take my word on it. But this is based on what I heard from a case manager with Texas Disability Rights. She was like, when there's expenses that an employer won't pay for with your job, and I think I heard it from the Social Security office, it counts against your income. So there are certainly expenses with a company like Instacart where you're driving your own vehicle, you're putting in your own gas, you're paying your own car insurance, and you have all of these, you have maintenance, you have mechanical issues, you have to fix up your car, tires, whatever, writing down the wear and tear of your vehicle on the miles, and getting to write that all off at the end of the year. But I was like, I don't know how to do that. I do my own taxes, but I was like, do you really want to pay someone? Because I have other tax reporting to do. I have a whole set of other, like, even if I did get that vehicle, I was like, how would I do that? Could I look it up online to take a lesson? Could I do this? Could I do that? And it was like, maybe, even if I made like something, we'll say $10,000, it really sounds like I could write off what I've heard. The stories I've heard would be like, you could write off a huge portion of that based on the miles, the wear and tear of the vehicle, and all of that stuff where your income is really low. And it doesn't count technically as reportable income, which doesn't make any sense, but like uniforms, stuff like that. If you have to pay for your uniform, your shoes, your apron, that receipt, you got to keep up with the receipt, and it comes off that month. So what I have to come up with my own pay stubs and stuff like that. So it just complicates things. But I mean, Instacart's not the only thing. It wasn't the top of the list either. There was something like, teaching online, and some other options. But those things is just like, there's certain people out there. You might get envious or jealous of someone who is in that situation, and they might not want to be in that situation at all. But things going on in their daily lives, and I even researched it about 18 months ago. I was like, what would I do? I would try to work 80 hours a week, and how am I going to work 80 hours a week? One day I woke up during that time, and I was like, okay, I'm going back to bed lay down for a minute. I was super exhausted. The anemia just got really bad to me. Another thing, I had a health scare. I got stage 3 kidney disease. And what the heck? I know. So I had been taking Red Bull or something like that. So now I had energy drinks, and my doctor was like, oh, you have energy drinks. Get off the energy drinks. And so I drink a lot of water as well. So I was doing that, and my kidney function went back to normal, but I'm still scared that I could always relapse, because it relapsed one thing. And the research I had done online, they were like, oh, your kidneys can't come back. But mine did, just because of this special scenario. I had been drinking energy drinks. And so it's that stuff looms in the mind. I had been to the emergency room for various stuff. And so I do have other stuff going on with me that I'm not even mentioning. But it's just like, what the heck? And some of it gets in the way of daily living, of daily functioning, of daily producing, and going forward, and going, oh, this is what I need, this is what I need to do, this is what I need to do. And it's not a lifestyle that you want to wish on anyone. And so I basically am real thrilled to be privileged to work for such a company like Kroger. I am privileged to be in that opportunity, and to have that chance. Like, I've had bosses that have been very cooperative on the hourly limits that Social Security provides, because of the now I'm granted I'm really allowed to earn like $1,470 a month. I only earn, like, if it's 1,000 that month, that's what, or even if it hits 1,000, I might get more than 1,000 a month in that month. But right this year is $1,470, and just in case you want to know, look it up. It's called Substantial Gainful Activity. If you're on Social Security disability and you're looking into that, because no one would tell me, there are disability rights locations by state. Mine was Texas disability rights. Other states have them. I don't know if all states do or not, but you could get possibly a case manager to give you information on that. And so that is it. But this has been 30 minutes, and I'm afraid my phone is going to say I've used all my space. So I'm going to basically, possibly, I don't know if I'll do another thing on this. It depends on if it gets one view. So, all right. Thank you so much. Finance Nation out.